Ray, is this the line for the meeting?
Hey, Jill, can you hear me?
Are they? Do you need a phone booth?
Yes, I can.
Oh, can you turn yours? Jill, you want to try that again?
Yep. Can you hear me?
We can indeed. Thank you, dear.
No problem.
Good morning, everybody. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with this morning's meeting. I'm happy to see all of you guys here, and let's start off with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I don't think we have like the massive agenda items. I do know we have one important item. We have a new member proposed to the board, to the committee. I don't see her here this morning yet. Okay. Mary Beth, did you have anything?
No, sir. We don't have anything to add or change the agenda.
Okay. All right. So the do we have any public comment? Is there anyone that was here? Okay. Can I get someone to recommend action on the agenda? Okay. Second. All right. We have a motion to approve the agenda and a second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye. All right. So the agenda is approved. I was a little bit ahead. We don't have anybody for public comment. Okay. All right. Can we get the FDOT update, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The department would like to update you on a couple of ongoing one ongoing construction projects and two that are just kicking off. The first one being the bridge replacement on John Sims Parkway over Tom's Bayou Bridge here in Niceville. That project is moving along as scheduled, and it has an anticipated completion date of November 19th of this year. The other two projects are the State Road 85 resurfacing project. This is a contract, a 650-day contract. It includes resurfacing of 85 from State Road 123 north to Hospital Drive. Within that are numerous access management and turn lane improvements. This project is just getting started, and we're anticipating it being completed at the end of calendar year 23. As we all know, we'll have weather impacts and things of that nature that will likely extend that contract period. And the major project that we want to make you aware of is the Interchange west of Crestview. The contract has been awarded. This is a design build effort, so we'll have both the designers and the contractors working jointly as this project moves forward. This is a 1,300-day contract, so this will be quite a substantial improvement. This will be coordinated very closely with the improvements on PJ Adams, the county is completing. And let's see. That comes in at approximately $73 million for that interchange, just for your information. And with that, that completes the department's update for this meeting.
Okay, I just had a question, and I'll get to you just a second. The Highway 85, there was an announcement that was released on Facebook, and it said $25 million for the project. It was an FDOT release, and it sounded like a resurfacing. I don't know if it was going to be the enlargement, the 3-laning from 123 all the way up to a Hospital Drive, sidewalk, and those types of things. So can you clarify?
Yes, sir. That's all included in the one contract. So any information related to resurfacing will also encompass, like I said, access management, turn lanes, the additional turn lanes and around the interchange, and moving north to Hospital Drive.
Okay, did they include the 3-laning?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make clear, Ms. Earl. Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions for DOT?
I do. What's the status of the Brooks Bridge?
Brooks Bridge, that project is scheduled to be awarded April of 22. The department had a hybrid aesthetics workshop recently, I think in April, where we looked at some alternatives for the bridge itself. You know, some, again, more of the aesthetic nature of the bridge. Right-of-way acquisition started last year and will go through fiscal year 23. We will have to have all the right-of-way acquired prior to the project beginning construction, obviously, but that we do not anticipate any problems with that. This is also a design build contract, so the department did prepare plans up to 60%. That allows the design build firm then to take it and basically run with it from there. So what you'll see in that same situation, again, we hope to award a contract in April of next year. They will finalize the design and start work on construction, those construction activities that they can go ahead and get started on. So you should see movement on that project shortly after the first of the year. And as that moves forward, we'll be updating the TPO and this board in the future.
One item that's, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Were there a lot of input on the survey of the design?
The aesthetic, so yes, they actually had a really good level of input, especially from the online. There was a tremendous amount of comments. The department has compiled a report, and while no decisions are made at this point in time, those will be put forth as the project moves forward.
Okay, and there was one other question that came up. The Okaloosa County Commissioners approved their new budget starting Friday, and in there, kind of a corollary with the southwest bypass, the northwest bypass for Old Bethel, that they were putting money into that. Is that a joint state county project?
Right now, that's a county project, but the department is willing to participate in that project as it moves forward, because we do realize that, you know, the bypass is imperative for the state's continued, I guess, acceptable level of service on State Road 85. So it'll be an off-system road, but the department is committed to continuing to partner with the county as needed to ensure the success of the full bypass.
Okay, so is there any timeline on the northwest bypass?
The PD&E, the environmental portion of it, is complete. The county's working on design. So, but beyond that, at this point, I'm not aware of any time schedule.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Is there, with the end of the fiscal year and the beginning of the next fiscal year and the political decision between renewing budget or other, is there any impact on any of the programs that we're talking about?
The department, the FDOT is accustomed to working with continuing resolutions for the Federal Highway Administration Trust Fund. We factor that into our economic analysis of it moving forward. So based on historical, again, continuing resolutions, we should be able to continue our work. Now, however, if there's a point in which the trust fund does get locked down through lack of action at the federal level, that yes, that would greatly affect projects that have a federal funding source, which a fair amount of our capacity projects do.
So the answer is it all depends.
Yes, sir, my crystal ball is not that clear.
Okay, I just wondered.
All right, anybody else? This is very lively. Go ahead.
Yes, with the resurfacing of 85 going up to Hospital Drive, is there going to be any improvement in ITS systems?
To my knowledge, there are no ITS improvements included in that, but now that's pretty well down in the weeds. If there's any ITS out there, we will maintain. If there's any ITS out there that is out of date, it will be upgraded to the current standards. But if there's, I'm just not sure, since the county maintains that system for us, you know, I can't speak for sure about, you know, the addition of any ITS facilities, but it would be a safe assumption that the county does have ITS infrastructure along that corridor. It'll either be maintained or upgraded depending on its condition.
Thinking capacity and being able to improve flow, particularly through I-10 Crestview traffic lights.
The biggest portion of this project is actually additional lanes, additional turn lanes, additional through lanes, improving the flow by limiting some of the access management ability through there, making it safer. So again, ITS will be maintained through there, but the crux of this project is to look at the added capacity through there.
Any improvements to stopping the deer coming out on the road?
No, sir. We unfortunately we don't have a method for that other than putting up our fences.
The only additional light I'm aware of is at Hospital Drive for the shopping center that's going in. I think all the other traffic control measures as far as lights are going to be the same. So I'm anxious to see it get done because we really there are times when it's like a parking lot. So in hurricane evacuation scenarios, it would be really good to have those things in place. So I'm glad it started.
And just to put this in context, we are still moving forward on the State Road 85 multi-laning project. The environmental analysis is underway. The design is funded, and so we continue to look for funding opportunities for the remaining right-of-way acquisition and construction phases. So this is not this is only an interim improvement. We're still looking for the full build out of the needed capacity along this corridor.
Okay, I thought last meeting we had some comments about maybe some COVID funds that were sent to the state that may be available, or since we still had pretty good economic activity in the state, that maybe there may be some dollars that might be available. I'm not. I was more on a federal level with the colors of money, but I didn't know if there was something we had a discussion about possible dollars that may be added into the DOT budget.
Yes, sir. We've had the opportunity to program some stimulus funds through the various COVID acts. We were successful in getting some of the portions of Back Beach Road and Bay County funded. We have a few smaller traffic operations, safety type projects that we were able to move forward. We did not get any stimulus funds in the Okaloosa-Walton area, but don't be discouraged about that, because honestly, by taking the US 98 projects off the board in Bay County, those were some really large, big ticket items. Once our internal state funds level off as they have, we look to be able to start advancing some of these projects, especially the ones that are on the CIS, which I'll be discussing next. State Road 85 is on the strategic intermodal system. So with so many of the big ticket items statewide being funded through stimulus dollars, we stand a very good chance of moving these remainder projects that are on the CIS up in priority and hopefully get them funded quicker.
Okay. So I take it that was your lead in for your next topic?
Yes, sir. You timed that just right.
All right.
I think you don't have the slide on the, not that you'll be able to read it, but you can see what I'm referring to.
I don't know that we have the slide, but they have it in their packet.
Okay. Well, if you'll look in your agenda package, we have a small 2-page brochure concerning the update to the strategic intermodal system. And for anyone not aware, I'll basically read you the first couple of lines from the handout. This will give you an idea of what the CIS is. It says the CIS is a statewide network of high-priority transportation facilities, including the state's largest and most significant airports, spaceports, public seaports, freight rail terminals, passenger rail, and intercity bus terminals. Also our waterways and, of course, the highways. And as a little refresher, let me go over the corridors that are on the CIS in the Okaloosa-Walton area. The entire segments of I-10, US 98, and US 331 are on the CIS within your TPO boundaries. State Road 85 from I-10 to State Road 123 is on the CIS. State Road 123 from 85 north down to 85 south is on the CIS. And as a military access connector, the portions of Government Street and John Sim Parkway that takes you to the base entrance are on the CIS. So all of these roadways are eligible for the strategic intermodal system funding. Just real briefly, I'll let you know, it has been a policy that at a minimum, 65% of all capacity dollars available to the Florida DOT be applied to this system. So by far, this is the biggest funding pot we have to move forward for capacity projects related to all modes of transportation. This policy plan that's upcoming, or is actually underway right now, gives us the opportunity to discuss the framework of how we determine what projects, one, are on the system, and how do we prioritize the funding of those projects on the system. If you'll look at the back of your slide, of your handout, we have struggled here in the Panhandle to have an understanding at a statewide level that while, yes, we do have our metropolitan areas, we are still very rural in this area. We need a focus on that rural network in order to connect our urbanized areas. And if you'll look under the focus areas column, the last two talks about urban mobility and connectivity and rural mobility and connectivity. This gives us our first real opportunity to move on these issues. While they have always been discussed and recognized, they've not been elevated to the level of a focus area. So what we're looking to do is continue to promote this so that we can understand how the rural areas connection to our urbanized areas is so critical. Another key takeaway from this is our metropolitan corridors that are really restricted due to right-of-way cost and other maybe natural impacts. This proposal gives us opportunity to spend funds off the strategic intermodal system on, I'll say, parallel facilities, where it can show a direct reduction in congestion on the CIS by improvements to other facilities. This is very pertinent in this particular region, US 98 through Fort Walton and Destin. It would be very difficult to continue to add capacity to these roadways via added lanes. But what we're going to have to start looking at is how do we relieve the congestion with parallel and or other facilities. So this is a good step forward for us here in the Panhandle, the District 3 of Florida DOT. And so we just wanted you to take a look at this handout. If you've got any comments or concerns, please let us know. Again, we're moving in the right direction. It's going to take us a while, but at least this gives us the opportunity to be on record for the use of these funds in our more rural areas as the plan gets developed later this year and into next year. The CIS plan, the process is, the policy plan is developed, which is where we're at now. We move into what we call the first 5 years of the program. That'll be delivered when we deliver the tentative work program in October. Then the final two components is the CIS looks at a second 5-year window of pretty firm projects. You know, it's not as firm as the first 5, but we go ahead and look at the second 5 to have a cohesive plan. And then we look at the remaining 10 years, that's referred to as a CIS cost feasible plan. Very similar to what the TPO puts together. We look at our revenues over a 20-year period and determine, okay, what can we realistically construct? So you'll see the first 5, and then you'll see the department develop the second 5 and the cost feasible on into late next calendar year. So there's where we're hoping to see the State Road 85s, the US 98s, and under this new guidance, if it goes through, maybe let's start looking at some options to US 98 through Okaloosa and Walton County. What can we do to relieve that congestion? So that's a summary of what we're doing. Again, please review this. If you have any questions about it, please reach out to myself or Starsky Harold with the department. We'll be glad to try to explain anything and also provide us any comments you may have. And with that, that concludes the update to the CIS plan.
Mr. Cox.
Yes, CIS and military access to Hurlburt Field. Is that included in the CIS?
Well, since Hurlburt Field main gate, or the gate we recognize, is directly off US 98, that they don't have a military access road because it's literally 98 to the front gate. So
Could that be included in the CIS?
US 98 isn't on the CIS.
It is.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So the next item is the approval of the June minutes. Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Rennie seconds.
Okay, all right. Any discussion? I did see that one of the items on the minutes that was missing the name of the individual. It's irrelevant to the discussion, but anyway, just a typo. Any comments on the minutes? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, all right, so the minutes are approved. Any nays? Okay. All right. And we have the next item, consideration of resolution LW 2116. And Mr. Was it Vansela?
Fanslow, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you all for attending here today. Enclosed in your agenda is consideration of resolution OW 2116, adopting targets for transit safety performance measures. The Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act, MAP 21, requires state DOT and TPOs to establish performance targets that address the performance measures or standards established. These measures are to be used in tracking progress towards attainment of critical outcomes for the region of the TPO. Okaloosa County, Emerald Coast Rider, fixed route and demand response paratransit operations set safety targets for fatalities, injuries, and events for the transit agencies that were approved July 20, 2021 by the Board of County Commissioners. The targets are shown in your enclosure. The resolution is requesting the TPO adoption of the following transit safety targets for fixed route and demand response: 0 fatalities, 0 injuries, 0 safety events, and an annual revenue miles of 977,021. For an example, for these targets, I know 0 targets aren't always attainable, but in transit, these targets can be attainable. In 2019, the data that they reported to the NTD, National Transit Database, they had 1 injury and they had 1 safety event. So in other counties, they've also had zeros in those areas, but that's low numbers in the transit industry. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have or comments.
All right. Any questions?
The last item, annual vehicle revenue, what does that mean? Is that what buses ride or cars ride? Or?
Yes, sir. That's how many miles that the fixed route transit is doing while in service. So when they actually are doing their routes.
Is there a wide variety of vehicles? I mean, you got buses that drop every day, and then you got people that take cars and individual items. So that.
These are only the buses. These are only the buses for fixed route and demand response. So it's only the public transportation vehicles being used to transport Okaloosa citizens. Does that answer your question?
I guess so.
Anyone else?
I just want to comment and get Howard to clarify. I am thinking that revenue miles is when they are actually picking up passengers. And then there are what you call deadhead miles, where they're like coming back to the shop and they have no one on the bus. So the revenue miles are actual miles where they could potentially receive revenue, correct?
Right, they're in service, they're picking up clients. For the fixed route, that's when they're doing their routes, whether there's a person on the vehicle or not. For the demand response, that would be when they're going around to pick up their individuals. But as Mary Beth mentioned, a deadhead would be when they're going to start their route. That wouldn't count as the revenue miles.
So I mean, what is the usefulness of that figure? I mean, compared to last year or in previous years, is that up or down or?
So we have the opportunity to Okaloosa, these are the targets they put in theirs for the fixed route. So we just adopted those targets. The usefulness, I guess, would be if you have more revenue miles, you have more opportunity for accidents and incidents. The less revenue miles you have less opportunity. So if you doubled your routes, doubled your opportunity for accidents.
But I'm asking, like, has COVID had an impact or, because people travel less or travel
Yeah.
more?
Yes, sir. As far as COVID goes, for the fixed route, the number of miles really hasn't changed because they're still doing the number of routes that they're doing. For the demand response, which is where they pick up people at their doors and take them to appointments and such, that has definitely declined in mileage, no doubt, because of COVID.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so there's recommended action here for this item.
Recommend approval of the motion.
All right, anyone else want to second that?
Yvonne Earl, second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
Is there ever gonna recommend anything else?
I think we had the same thing from previous where, you know, the answer is 0 for traffic fatalities, which we discussed was unrealistic. I mean, as many millions of miles as people drive in this area. I don't know, do you want to comment on that?
I will say for transit, I do think that it is an attainable goal. In some of our other counties, now demand response is different than fixed route, but I have Holmes, Washington, and Walton County for their transit agencies for years have had 0 incidents, fatalities, accidents even. And when we're talking accidents, we're not necessarily talking they got a limb of a tree that scratched their vehicle. We're talking where a vehicle's immobilized, where it's a major thing where somebody actually has to go to a hospital or has a serious injury or the vehicle can no longer travel. So for transit, in my opinion, I think they're attainable. 0 is a good goal, you know, in the transit industry.
Yeah, we've had those discussions about that number before. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all right, so we unanimously approved that one. All right. How are we doing, Mary Beth? All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it was important we have this meeting. All right, so we do have a lady that has completed an application and has been sponsored to be on this committee. Unfortunately, she is not with us today. That does not mean you cannot approve her application. Her name is Ms. Jackson. I'm not even going to try to say her first name because it's I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to butcher anybody's name, but Ms. Jackson's her application information. She apparently works at Eglin as
She's a diversity
and inclusion program manager. So she's from Crestview. Mr. Barte originally recommended her, and then I believe Mayor Witten, and then because he already had someone on this committee, Councilman Rensick supported her. So she does have a board member that is sponsoring her. And
I can elaborate.
okay,
Yeah, I've known Ms. Jackson, I think, and it's pretty sad. I try to stay away. It's almost like you want to ask them if they have a pet name or something. But Wanjiku, as I believe how you pronounce her first name, I really wish she was here. Outstanding young lady that has been involved in many things. And the reason I approached her about being on this committee, first, we need membership, but incredibly competent, very smart. She has been active in the community in a number of ways. You can see, I'm not going to read what she's done. You have it in your packet, but I think incredibly highly of her, and I think she could be a valuable asset to this committee. I think that brings us to what? 3 Crestview out of a possible 4 positions. And I encourage you guys along the same lines. I mean, it helps if we have input from the different areas that this TPO covers to be represented on here. But in Ms. Jackson's case, I highly recommend her. I think the world of her. I think she can come in and really be a valuable part of this committee. So, anything else? Yes.
Said that she is a federal employee, or she was.
Is.
Does that limit her eligibility for Citizens Advisory Committee as opposed to the TCC?
No, sir. She would not be able to serve on this if she were a contractor or a consultant in transportation planning. So she's an employee. Will be serving as a citizen, a resident of Crestview. She has that job, but
I didn't know whether she still is a federal employee.
Yeah, she was over at Northwest Florida State College, and then earlier, I want to say February of this year, she became a program manager at Eglin. So it has nothing to do with transportation or anything like. She's I think the diversity program manager or something to that effect over at the base. Diversity and inclusion program manager in a civilian capacity.
Alec, can I offer this up? I was a civilian employee at Eglin and was appointed to one of the committees, and I took leave to attend the committee meetings. So there was no conflict with my federal employee status, but I had to take leave and did take leave to attend those meetings. And that was voluntary on my part. And I presume the same rules would be in effect for Mrs. Jackson. If that's what you were curious about, I was just taking a stab.
she was an adjunct professor at Northwest Florida State College, so.
And she still is. She's, yeah. Okay. Steve, did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah, I just was curious as to how being a government employee might affect the eligibility to be in the CAC versus ECC.
Oh, she's not an engineer, I know that. So from a technical background, you know, I don't think that would be, where she would fit. So that's why for the CAC, I think she could be a good asset to this committee. Okay, anyone else? Any other questions? All right, so any request action on Ms. Jackson's application? Okay, and anyone else? All right, Mr. Cox has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of Ms. Jackson joining the CAC, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. Ms. Jackson's a new member. Are you guys reach out to her? Okay, all right. All right, but now we have a presentation.
If Ms. Nobles is on the line, is she?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Jill's got an update on your long-range transportation plan.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and CAC members. If you can go to the next slide, please. So we are currently in the 2045 long-range transportation plan update. It is an update that happens every 5 years. And out of this plan comes two major lists of projects, the needs plan and the cost feasible plan. For the needs plan, that's all the projects that are needed to fix the entire transportation network within the TPO area. And then the cost feasible plan is a shorter version of the needs plan of what we can afford. And why this is important is that cost feasible plan is what we look at every year on an annual basis and what you guys and the TPO prioritizes. And those priorities are then sent to FDOT to make up their 5-year work program. And that's how projects get completed. So that's the importance of the LRTP update. If you can go to the next slide, please. We are current. You're okay, Ray. We started this a little over a year ago, this whole update process. We looked at what the conditions were in the TPO area right now. We formed goals and objectives with our steering committee members to identify kind of like on a broader conceptual basis of what we want this network to look like. We developed evaluation criteria to determine, quantitative measures to evaluate each project as they come in. We then looked at the financial resources, the revenues that we can foreseeably that are foreseeably coming in over the next 20 plus years. And then we looked at the congestion management process plan. We updated it, looking at how the roadway networks are currently operating, as well as the bicycle and pedestrian and transit infrastructure. And now we are in the needs plan and cost feasible plan portions of the plan to identify projects that will help the TPO. Next slide. We've been working with our steering committee members to identify all of the projects needed. We think we have a really good draft needs plan right now. We're currently in the outreach portion of the needs plan development. If you can go to the next slide. We are asking the public to go on our website, look at a workshop that we did earlier this month, last week. You can click next. And you can, view that workshop at any time. You didn't have to be there that hour that we did it. You can submit comments. You can sign up to be notified. You can subscribe to our email list and everything. We have a survey as well. You can go to the next slide. And so we are asking everyone, and if y'all haven't seen this, please take a look on our website. If you have any trouble finding it, just reach out to me. We're asking everyone to fill out this survey at this time. Next slide. So this is kind of an overview of the last final 4 months of the LRTP update. This month, we held a steering committee at the beginning of the month. Behind the scenes, us and our consultant HDR are developing purpose and needs statements for each project in the needs plan, kind of finalizing that draft document. We do have another steering committee meeting next week on October 5th. The TPO meeting in October, since it's all virtual, we will only be presenting the draft needs plan and the draft cost feasible plan just for information. In November, we're going to have another steering committee meeting just to really finalize that cost feasible plan list and have a workshop for the public, do another set of public outreach for specifically the cost feasible plan. And then in December, we will be asking the TPO to adopt the needs plan and the cost feasible plan. So we'll dive more into it at your next meeting in October to really look at the needs plan and cost feasible plan drafts. And I will see you then. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jill. Any questions or comments for the presenter?
I have a question, Ellie.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe Jill's still on the line. Last meeting, the steering committee, I asked about widening. You and I talked about 285, and Jill said she would put it to the committee. I just wondered if that was done.
I'm sorry, Miss Yvonne. I can't remember if we specifically talked about that. I know it hasn't popped up in our analysis. I will get back to you on that for a better answer, and I apologize.
Okay, because I know there was another incident again, besides the person being killed. It was a drunk driver coming south, and they were going north, and they ended up in the ditch. So, but nobody was hurt, and the drunk driver kept going. So he had to be drunk driving on the wrong side of the road. So.
And I don't know if I mentioned, my wife actually was behind a motorcyclist that was killed by a person going opposite direction.
Yeah, my husband was last month involved in something, so it's not getting better. Yeah. But I just want to double check to see if, I had to physically put in a request or you could do it. You were going to do it.
I will take care of that. This will count as your comment.
Mr. Rennie.
On the meeting notices for the LRTP planning meeting, could you put a link to the LRTP? So hunting around on the website and I just haven't found the magic to download it.
Yes, sir.
I-
The person responsible is sitting right here. I'll make sure that happens.
Thank you.
And I don't know if this is, I'll bring it up. I had a teacher from Crestview High School concerned about the students from both Davidson Middle School, Crestview High School going across 85, and asking about an elevated walkway, if that was something that could be considered to help alleviate the potential for a student to get crushed on 85. So is this an appropriate venue? I'll follow the Miss Earl approach to getting something on here. Is this the appropriate place to bring that up?
So, like I said before the meeting, Mr. Chairman, I think it is an appropriate place. I would start with Mr. Polk because I know kind of sort of what he's going to say, but also it would be something perhaps in the long-range plan. But I would ask Bryant if he wanted to give his opinion on that.
Yes, you know, when we think of the long-range plan, you think of big capacity type projects. However, these pedestrian overpasses are very expensive, both from a construction standpoint and oftentimes from a right-of-way acquisition standpoint. So we do ask that these are put in the LRTP so that they're properly vetted and then can then be ranked on the annual project priority list to be considered for funding. A lot of other steps have to be taken, but really that's your first step as far as getting it, you know, in the long-range plan, so that the department can study it and the TPO can take action on it.
Okay. All right, we shall do that.
I have a question. Right now, the elevated walkway that I'm aware of for schools in Niceville.
Mhm.
And I don't know if there's another one. The question being, is from my opinion, my question is whether there's any type of evaluation that shows the effectiveness of having an elevated walkway or a tunnel or whatever. And I don't know if there are other elevated walkways for schools around and why all of a sudden it would be that location to build one as opposed to any of the other locations. So.
Well, it was presented to me as an elevated crosswalk, but I would identify the need for the safety of the children. I would not try to define the requirements of what it's going to take, a tunnel or if it's elevated. Just, I think there needs to be some consideration for an improvement for the safety of the kids going across the highway. So I say it's elevated because that is what was asked of me. But I think there's some engineering types. There's some others that have more experience. If they come up with a different method to protect the kids, I'm fine with that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, just seems to be the usual way of solving the problem is to use crossway guards and blocks and things of that nature, which I don't know what the expense of building an elevated walkway is, but like I said, when I drive down Johnson's Parkway and look at the elevated walkway for Niceville High School, it's not used very often.
And I had the same comment somebody had mentioned to me about that. I do know that there is only, and I don't know if it's, I don't know, you know if it's the Crestview Police Auxiliary or if it's the actual police?
I drive that road during that, and there is a crossing guard there. And they're
Right.
usually paid by the school district, my understanding. It's like the ones on the racetrack and stuff.
Okay.
But the kids are supposed to cross the line where the crossing guard is.
Mhm.
And of course, kids don't do what they're
Well, but
supposed to do.
the issue
And
is
then-
not so much when the crossing guards are there, it's when they're not. There's only so much time in the morning, so much time in the afternoon, and they're not gonna stay there 24/7.
And they do
you
the
know?
same thing on racetrack I was
Right.
gonna do. They cross at different spots where there's crossing guard at Denton, and then the police usually down in front of the high school. But unless they can get the sheriff to do something, it's really expensive for the.
Right. Oh, and I get it.
We
And-
teach the kids the costs at crosswalks. They don't do it anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, this conversation could really go on. I agree with you. I think that there's an education process, child meets car, child loses. It's about as simple as it gets. And there may be other ways. That's why I'm not going to propose a solution other than I'm repeating what the teacher brought up to me. But if there's a better way, education certainly is a process that should be undertaken. But if there's another way to resolve the matter, I mean, we just don't have unlimited dollars to, here's I don't know how much a crosswalk costs. Here's $5 million to go build a crosswalk, and you might think that's insane, but hey, very, very well could be with the studies and everything else. So, Ms. Jameson.
CTST has also started back up again. And I know Community Safety Traffic Safety Team. And I'm back on it, although I haven't been to the last 2 meetings. But anyways, that is one of their big things that they do, is to help on the crosswalks and stuff for schools,
Okay.
keeping the safety into it. I know that they were a part of the one just on College Boulevard on that Passover.
Okay.
Or not Passover, but getting it walkable and getting that all done. And they've done different things like around Pryor Middle School. There's been different projects, even Shalimar, that they do for the safety of the schools. So that might be another avenue for her to go.
Okay. Again, I'll talk to you offline if there's a point of contact or something.
Yes, there is.
Okay. All right. I mean, like I say,
And they're a school resource officer, and they're with the sheriff's department. And maybe if you want to get kids to use the crosswalk, then you need to start enforcing the law to require them to use the crosswalk to get that through their heads. But
we can get into another. We had enforcement discussion this morning about left lane drivers. All right. I got to tell you, it's been pretty lively. I'm glad that we've had some good discussions and at least bring up the topic. And I'd love to get that point of contact from you. Does anybody have anything else, Mayor Beth? Do we have anything that we have not covered?
Not as far as action and presentation. I'll just briefly talk about the information items, your minutes, actions, reports, some correspondence. There's the schedule in here, which I'm sure it's up to date, but we seem to be having to change venues. Our next meeting, your next meeting will be October the 21st, and it will be virtual. It will be at the same time you normally meet, 9:30. So there will be no action on that meeting, but it will be a lot of information. And Jill will be talking about the long range plan, about the cost feasible, the needs and the cost feasible. And there may be some additional information presented at that meeting. So I would not go to that meeting because it's no action. It's going to be some really good information. So I think that's pretty, unless Mary Jo, do you want to say anything about the Mobility Week?
So I think at your seats, there's a handout about the upcoming Mobility Week. It's going to take place October 29th through November 5th. Excuse me. We're asking all of our partners, different agencies to take an active part in Mobility Week this year. This is the 6th annual Mobility Week. There is local events. Those are listed on the flyer as well. There's a kickoff on the 29th, and then we're also working with the transit agencies to offer transit riders possibly free passes for Tri-Transit Day, which is going to be on Tuesday. We also are going to have a booth with all of this type of information about Mobility Week at the Symposium in November. There's a Love to Ride, which if you're a bicyclist or you like to bike, no matter how much or how little, you can register online as an individual or as a team, and you can win prizes and all kinds of things. So that's also the link in the website is there for you to join. We would love for the CAC to spread the word about this to other people or organizations, businesses that you know that can participate, as a business or individually, like you said. So we appreciate your support on this.
All right, thank you. One thing I had a question about was the Transportation Symposium. Do you have any information about that? Didn't we set up rep before?
Well, yes, there have been folks sent in the past. This particular symposium, because we were going to have it and then we had to cancel and then we decided to have it again. We've kind of brought it down a little bit, so it's a little bit lower level event. But it is coming up and the information is on the website. You all have a flyer in front of you if you're interested.
Okay. So that's not something that's paid for through the CAC or anything like that. If a person wants to go,
Correct.
it's at their own expense. Okay. All right. Anything? Yes, Mr. Cox.
Yes. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to England in the summer and saw how electric vehicle management is progressing in UK. Electric vehicles now have a separate license plate so they can be identified. A number of communities that have congestion charges are now waiving them for electric vehicles. Electric vehicle laning or defining areas for autonomous electric vehicles is moving ahead rapidly. I get the impression there will be greater incentives to move towards electric rather than fossil fuel vehicles. I'm not seeing quite the momentum happening in this country. Standardization for autonomous vehicle markings and lanings, the infrastructure for charging, and I can foresee in England that there will be separate roads for EVs or higher toll charges for non-EVs. So I'd be interested to see how we're going to progress towards the same end.
Well, as soon as you say the electronic vehicles, I think about the fuel taxes that fund a lot of our investments in roadways. I did see in the Wall Street Journal that China has shut down a number of their factories that produce the EVs. I think there was some, in the past week maybe, there was some information about improved battery performance. It's really, I don't know, Mr. Polk, if you had any comments about electronic vehicles in the state of Florida, if there was anything to develop the infrastructure for charging. I know Crestview has one station, but I mean, I don't know, is there anything that you have?
The department, our central office in Tallahassee has put a significant amount of time into looking at the various possibilities and analysis. We know it's coming. We know it's going to be a huge impact on our major or sole revenue stream for the majority of our projects. However, because this is such a fast moving and dynamic field, we're unable to make any decisions related on how we're going to move forward, because the alternative tax proposals are always challenging in some form or another. As it relates to more charging facilities, FDOT is very open to providing the opportunity for those. One instance that comes up on a regular basis is providing electronic vehicle charging at our rest areas. That's where we bump up against the Federal Highway Administration. They have a certain precedent that they do not want to allow for charge services at the rest areas. So maybe that's something they will be able to overcome at a federal level that could allow us to do that as we move forward. But the department does work closely with cities, counties that pursue these grants for electric charging stations. If we have, for instance, a park and ride lot that is convenient and appropriate, that would be something we would consider. If we have excess right-of-way at any given location, it will be something we would consider. But obviously, these have to be placed at very strategic locations, and they may or may not coincide where the state owns right-of-way. But it's definitely something we're really want to partner with, when the ability is there for us to do so.
I read about partnering with gas stations, because gas stations have a vested interest. Today you're going to pull in, and guess what? You're going to pay. If you're going to drive someplace, you're going to pay. So as time goes on, and we're talking a number of years, you're going to have the need for gas diminish. So it would behoove them to partner with, say, the state, to go ahead and have some charging stations, because guess what you're going to do when you're charging your vehicle? You're going to go inside and buy sodas and snacks and whatever else. So, or patronize local restaurants in those areas. So I don't know if the state is looking at it. I mean, okay, it'd be nice in rest areas, but where, one of those, I can't think of the movie, maybe it's My Cousin Vinny, Where Is My Motivation? So maybe partnerships with some of the larger fueling stations that might work to allow the state to have some of those charging stations. I don't know. It's just,
Well, I think you're headed in the right direction. Actually, this is all private party, connections. The state likely will not have the DOT would likely not have a say in this, because if your service stations and convenience stores want to allow that, there's nothing we need to do to make that happen. But like I said, they need to come to the realization that if they want to capture that portion of the community, they're going to have to provide the service.
yes, sir.
So I own an EV, so I travel quite frequently. I've not had any difficulties on the highway saying, okay, it's time to pull over and charge. I don't want to push this thing. There are a number of hotels in the area that have level 2 charging stations. So if you really got desperate, you could go there. As Mr. Paul said, it's a private industry undertaking. There's no standardization between the different vehicles that are coming out. I know that, all the major vehicle manufacturers are introducing cars in 2023, but there's been no real agreement. So, you'll drive around with a trunk full of adapters at some point in time. There'll be some cross connectivity down the road, but as we've all addressed, the potential to lose, tax dollars as gas revenues decline is something that I think they're going to have to take up at the federal level.
Oh yeah, there's been discussions about just some type of recording of the miles you drive per year. There's your bill.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's that's just
Right.
kind of a conversation point, but yeah, it may be some legalities. Yeah.
I'd like to continue where DOT could help with standardization, is standardization of markings for autonomous vehicles, so that it's standardized throughout Florida, if not the United States. So as AVs become more prevalent, the markings on the roads will facilitate their usage. Any talk or plans at DOT at the moment?
Actually, the majority of the standardized pavement markings and signage is on a federal level. We utilize the federal manual for our signage. That's why you'll see it pretty well consistent throughout the United States. And at the federal level, when those changes are made, we'll adopt those immediately here in Florida. If we see a need for advanced placement of signage, we will coordinate closely at the federal level, because we don't want to start having different types of signage in different states. But if we see the need, we will definitely, get out in front of the process and do what we need in our more urbanized areas where this becomes an issue.
Yeah, I've seen a number of things where it's hard to get somebody to pass a drug test and a CDL test to drive these large trucks. I think it was Tesla and some others are working using not only GPS, but magnetic strips in the highway embedded into the material so that these vehicles can continue on autonomously. I mean, we really are at the front of a lot of these things. And so I know Tesla has reverse capabilities. I can't think of the other company, but Tesla was smart enough to make not only their product, but also compatible with someone else's, who was the number 2 EV maker in the US. So that's something I read. Ms. Earl.
I have a question, totally different. It's on our agenda, in the back, on the transportation improvement plan.
Okay.
They added 2 things into our TIP program. One was sidewalk and then Mary Esther Boulevard. And the previous cost was $127,000. And with this, I'm sure it's resurfacing, but it jumped up to $9 million. And I just had a question, maybe Mary Beth, or if anybody's online can answer. It's the last page. Anyway, they were going to do something and maybe they added more stuff to it. But I've got 2 pages, page 16 and 17 in the back.
What's the location of that project?
It says State Road 393, Mary Esther Boulevard, resurfacing non-CIS. And it says lead agency FDOT. The length is 1.833 miles from 98 to Beale Parkway. And it says LRTP number, final report, page 7 through 5. And one was adopted on June 24th, and one was adopted on June 17th, but they look the same. But I was just curious, everything, it's a resurfacing, and I was just wondering if it's gone. I know the price of that's gone up but
Now, instances like this, more often than not, what you'll see is we try to let a contract at the end of our state fiscal year in June. We were unsuccessful. Either the bids were rejected or for whatever reason. The money has to go into the next fiscal year into July. And so that sometimes just based on that, you'll see some strange things happening. But no, we did not have a project increase at that level anywhere in the district, but I will check into that and let you know exactly what that's related to.
The last page of the agenda.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. All
I'm
right.
tired, so I have nothing to do but read.
There you go. All right. Anybody have anything else? All right. Well, we'll see you next time. This meeting is adjourned.
All right. Virtual on the 21st. Yeah, I can. Sometimes I can get on.